Well, welcome along to the Wrestling Review podcast, where this time we are reviewing the King of the Ring from 1993, recorded on April the 13th. Our commentators were Bobby Heenan, Jim Ross and Randy Savage. Now, it is our first King of the Ring as we have a look back at the history of the WWF, so it'll be interesting to see what we make of this very first ever edition of the King of the Ring. Now, this was the very first televised edition of King of the Ring. It came live from the Nutter Center in Dayton, Ohio, and they kept talking about how this was like the heartland of America. So I'm not really sure why Dayton, Ohio is the heartland of America. If anyone knows, please let me know. It'd be interesting to find out why. Because I had a quick look on a map, and it's not in the center. I thought that might be it. I can't see any reason why Dayton, Ohio is the heartland of America, but apparently it is. So there we go. So as already mentioned, our commentators Bobby Heenan, Jim Ross and Randy Savage, I think these three work really well together, really quite like the commentary on this show. We start off with a voiceover from Vince, who welcomes us to the first ever King of the Ring tournament. He's going to recap the matches that we've got coming up tonight. So our first round matches of Bret Hart versus Razor Ramon, Mr. Perfect versus Mr. Hughes, Hacksaw Jim Duggan versus Bam Bam Bigelow, and Tatanka versus Lex Luger. We then go into the arena and we hear Jim Ross, who welcomes us to the Nutter Center, and he is along with Randy Savage and Bobby Heenan. To start off, we hear Razor's music, and the Fink introduces our first round matchup. We have a video screen at the top of the entrance ramp as well, which I thought was kind of cool. It's our first sort of real video screen there. So, obviously our first match, Razor Ramon versus Bret Hart. Jim Ross says that the first round matches are one fall to a finish, and they each will have a 15-minute time limit. Bret then comes out and gets a fairly decent reaction. Jim mentions that Bret is the number one seed, which I'm not quite sure what the seeding system is or how that helps him at all, but apparently, yeah, he is the number one seed. Bobby Heenan then runs through Bret's titles, but mentions that they are all former titles. Bret then goes outside of the ring, hands his shades to a young fan. Razor decides to then toss his toothpick out into the crowd. We get a tie-up to start, and after some stalling from Razor, we get another tie-up, and Razor shows his strength, but they go for a tie-up for a third time, and Bret gets a side headlock. Bret then ducks a clothesline, takes Razor down, and slows it down with an armbar. We get a knee from Razor, and sends Bret into the ropes, who tries to counter the hip toss, but Razor hits a short arm clothesline. Bret then takes Razor down again with an armbar, as Bobby talks about how Bret has been wrestling all his life. We get a slam from Razor, but Bret holds on to the armbar. Bret starts working the arm, but a thumb to the eye from Razor and an elbow gets a 2 count. Razor then goes for a headlock, but Bret counters it into a hammerlock. We get a right hand from Razor, and he now starts to take the advantage. Razor sends Bret shoulder first into the ring post, which looks really hard, and we see a very odd-looking fan dressed as Hulk Hogan, like a really good cosplay of Hulk Hogan, sitting smack bang in the front row. Razor then with some rights and a kick to Bret on the outside before he throws Bret back into the ring, and the crowd come alive with a 1-2-3 count, which they do mention on commentary. We get a fall-away slam from Razor, which gets a 2.5. Razor then gets a running power slam and stomps on Bret. A side slam from Razor, and he misses an elbow, but tries and gets it on third time. Bret gets back up and hits right hands, and the crowd start to come alive now. We'll get a bit more of a crowd response. We get an inverted atomic drop and a clothesline from Bret before sending Razor into the ropes and hits the side Russian leg sweep for another 2 count. Bret then with a big back body drop for a 2. Bret with a backbreaker gets a 2 count. Bret goes up to the second ropes and hits an elbow drop for another 2 count. We get a headbutt from Bret and a roll up, and he gets a 2. He goes for the corner, and Bret goes for a bulldog, but Razor sends him chest first into the corner. Razor then signals for the Razor's Edge, but Bret breaks out, sneaks out the back, and reverses into a backslide attempt. He climbs the turnbuckles and gets an inside cradle for a very close 2 count. The crowd thought he got a 3, but no, the referee definitely signals it was only a 2. Razor then sets Bret onto the top rope and goes up to hit a suplex. Bret counters, lands on top of Razor to get the 3 count. Razor is up and he is not happy. Now, at the ending of that match, I did wonder whether it was supposed to be on the roll-up that they got the 3, because they kind of just went for a suplex and, yeah, Bret reversed and got the 3 in the end. Very good match. Obviously, it was our main event, really, on our first episode, our first pay-per-view episode, at least, where Bret was defending his championship against Razor. So, yeah, it's good to see Razor back in there with Bret. And, yeah, unfortunately for Razor, Bret advances. Jim Ross then tells us about an altercation we had on Superstars between Mr. Hughes and The Undertaker. We then see a recap of The Undertaker fighting with Giant Gonzalez as Paul Bearer is laying in the ring. Mr. Hughes cracks The Undertaker with the urn from behind. Mr. Hughes also hits Paul, who's laying in the ring with the urn. So I'm guessing, coming up in this Mr. Hughes, Mr. Perfect match, we might see a little bit of interference from The Undertaker, or at least an appearance by The Undertaker based on what they've just shown us. Indeed, it is time now for our second match, which is Mr. Hughes versus Mr. Perfect. We come back from that little video package and see that Mr. Hughes is in the ring with Harvey Whippleman, and Mr. Perfect makes his way down to the ring. Bobby at this point uses his brain scan drawing tool to show us how Mr. Perfect battered his gum away. He then goes to call Jim Ross Monsoon, but he stops himself. He starts to say, "What do you know, Mon?" And yeah, he starts to just call him Monsoon, which I thought was quite funny. The bell rings and we start with a tie-up between Hughes overpowers Mr. Perfect into the corner, and Mr. Perfect does a good job of looking shocked at the power of Mr. Hughes. We get a tie-up again, and again Mr. Hughes overpowers Mr. Perfect. But Perfect ups the pace and hits an arm drag and a drop kick, but Mr. Hughes won't go down off the drop kick. We get another tie-up, and a right hand from Mr. Hughes takes Perfect to the outside. A headbutt from Hughes and a clubbing blow to the back before Hughes locks in a rest hold neck vice type thing. We get Perfect back up though and ducks a clothesline, runs into a big boot. Hughes then with a clothesline and a snapmare into another neck vice. Mr. Perfect then whipped hard into the corner, and it's all Mr. Hughes so far in this match. It's not been exciting, it's not been fast paced, but it's been power manoeuvres and yeah, Mr. Hughes looking strong. We get an interview with Bret Hart now in the middle of the match in an inset promo, as Jim asks him if he has a preference, who he wants to face in the next round. Bret says he would rather on balance go with Mr. Perfect, as he would rather face the stamina and wrestling ability than the power of Mr. Hughes, and he adds that he likes him better as a person. Mr. Perfect then gets a chop and a hip toss and a back body drop as he quickens the pace again. A series of rights and chops in the corner from Mr. Perfect, but Mr. Hughes gets the urn and hits Perfect with it, but the ref saw it, so he just DQs him and awards the match to Mr. Perfect. So there we go. That was a rubbish end to that match. It wasn't a great match, to be honest. Mr. Hughes, yeah, Perfect sold, made him look strong. Perfect's offense, when he was on offense, was quite quick. It was sharp. Definitely better for Mr. Perfect to be moving on and getting Bret in the next round, I think, than facing Hughes there. Strange ending where Hughes just picked up the urn and smacked Mr. Perfect in the face with it, clearly in front of the ref. So he just got himself disqualified. I don't understand. There didn't seem to be a big feud between Perfect and Hughes at this point, so it's not like he just really wanted to get to Mr. Perfect. He just, picked the urn up and hit him. There was no appearance from The Undertaker, which, as I said, was expecting from the build-up. What was the point of showing us the video package of Mr. Hughes attacking Taker and Paul Bearer if then The Undertaker had no point in that match? Yeah, it was an interesting one. Next up, we get a pre-tape promo from Yokozuna and Mr. Fuji. Mean Gene is there, and he says that last time Yoko got in the ring, the results were disastrous for Yoko. Fuji says that the last time Yoko had a 20-minute match, but this time he is wiser, and Yoko says that Hulk is an American hero, but tonight he and America will go down. We cut back to the arena and see that Bam Bam is making his way down to the ring, which indeed means it's time for our third match, Bam Bam Bigelow versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Hacksaw comes out next with the USA flag and his 2x4. He gets a fairly decent reaction again. I've been, really surprised by the reactions that Bam Bam's been getting, both at Raw and here at the pay-per-view. Hacksaw gets a big USA chant started before we get going, and then when we do start, we get a lock-up to start, and Bam Bam gets a headlock but comes off the ropes, and then he hits shoulder blocks, but neither man moves. Jim Ross that is, tells us about Jim Duggan being in the NFL. We get a clothesline from Jim, and after a couple of Bam Bam goes down, goes to the outside, which lets Jim start another USA chant. I do wonder if people are really into Jim Duggan, the character, or are they just really into him being this all-American chanting USA? Obviously, it's a big thing in the WWF with the all-American wrestlers, the USA chanting that patriotic character. It'd be interesting to see a bit more of Jim Duggan. I feel like he's sort of coming towards the end of his career and his stint here with the WWF. Be interesting to maybe have gone back a bit further and seen what Hacksaw was like when he was sort of a bit younger and still sort of featured a bit more. But yeah, seems to get a decent reaction every time we see him. So Duggan blocks rights and hits his own, sending Bam Bam into the corner. Jim gets whipped into the corner and he hurts his ribs. He then goes for a slam, but his ribs won't let him. He won't get Bam Bam up. Bam Bam takes over and sends Jim into the ropes and gets a bear hug. Yeah, I say a bear hug. Duggan's just a bit too big though, and he fights out of it. It didn't look great, Bam Bam holding this bear hug on him. Bam Bam then misses a headbutt and Duggan goes for a slam, but again, this time he can't get him up. He falls backwards and Bam Bam gets a 2 count off it. They're really selling the injured ribs on commentary as well about how injured Duggan is. Another bear hug, and again, it just looks wrong with Duggan being so big. Bam Bam just, he's like bent right over and just kind of, cuddling him round his waist rather than looking like a move that's wearing Duggan down. He just looks like he's standing there while Bam Bam kind of, just cuddles him. Duggan this time, though, gets a slam on, and Bam Bam gets into the stance. Duggan gets into his stance, but Bam Bam moves, and Jim's head hits the turnbuckle. Bam Bam goes to the top and hits a flying headbutt for the 3 count. Bit of a surprise that Bam Bam's going through. I thought, the story they were going to tell there with Jim Duggan, but no, Bam Bam gets the 3. We then cut to the backstage and see Terry Taylor with the Smoking Guns and the Steiner Brothers, which apparently is a home video exclusive. Billy talks first and calls him Mr. Taylor, which I thought was very polite of young Billy Gunn there. He says that it could be a mini battle royal, all 8 guys in the ring, it could happen. He says he can't think of anyone other than his brother he'd rather have beside him. Bart gets a bit of talking then and says that their finisher could win the match. Okay, cool. And Scott then says that if he hits the Frankensteiner, nobody's getting up. Rick essentially just barks. And that's it. That's their little home exclusive interview. Next up, we've got our final first round match, Lex Luger versus Tatanka. So Lex is out first and he poses in front of his mirror. Jim says that Lex is the youngest player ever in the Canadian Football League. Bobby points out that both men are undefeated, so something has to give here. Well, yes, as in Lex Luger is undefeated, but we've hardly seen him, I feel like, since he debuted at the Royal Rumble. How many times has he appeared on Raw? Maybe twice? Like, he's this big character that they've just debuted, and he seems to have almost been forgotten about. He was this unveiled at the Royal Rumble. He had a match at Mania, which was okay, and then it's just like, what has he done since then? We're at King of the Ring now, and I don't feel like they're really making the best use of Lex so far. As in just like visibility, we're just not seeing him. So before the match starts, the referee's trying to make Lex put an elbow pad on as they talk about what is in Lex's arm. And there are 2 refs now in the ring, and they're both trying to get him to put this elbow pad on. Fink tells us, and everyone in the arena, that unless Lex puts the elbow pad on, he's going to be eliminated from the King of the Ring. Bobby says that he shouldn't have to cover up his arm. Bobby says that if Tatanka comes out, they should tie his shoes together or handcuff him so that he can't do his chops. I mean, I see Bobby's point, and he's obviously the heel commentator, but there's a little bit of a difference between a legal chop that Tatanka does and Lex's forearm, which they're selling as being full of metal and screws and plates, and it's basically a foreign object lodged in his arm. I guess foreign object is what they would call it at this time anyway. an illegal weapon, shall we say. As soon as Tatanka gets in the ring, Lex attacks him and throws him out to get back to his posing in front of the mirrors. Tatanka, though, comes back in, turns the mirrors over onto Lex. Couple of hard chops and then chops Lex over the top rope. A slam on the outside from Tatanka and they go back inside the ring. Tatanka gets an armbar and Lex counters with a slam, but he locks in another armbar. Bobby says there's no way you'll beat Lex with an armbar. Macho Man even agrees with him. Randy says that he wishes he was still in the ring to be in this tournament. You know, they're not really making any mention of when he was King Macho, but yeah, he says he'd love to be in this tournament. Randy says that winning the King of the Ring is as prestigious as being WWF Champion. Not sure I agree with that, Randy, but I get your point. We then get a Bam Bam Bigelow interview where he says that he wants to face Tatanka, but Tatanka won't advance any further than that. Jim Ross then says that the King of the Ring winner must be considered the number one contender for the WWF Championship. Randy says that Tatanka is wasting time holding his arm. This isn't amateur wrestling. Jim says that Tatanka is a Lumbee Indian, to which Bobby says that he is a dummy Indian. Randy says that Lex is wrestling smarter than Tatanka as he goes for a cover. We get a backbreaker from Lex and he walks around for a bit before just hitting an elbow drop. Goes for the cover to get a 2 count. Lex then with a big jumping elbow drop and again gets a 2. We get a roll up from Tatanka which then gets a 2, but Lex goes back to arguing with the ref and Lex looks to be sucking wind quite badly now at this point in the match. He is, looking a little bit tired. Lex gets a rear chinlock on Tatanka, who gets back up to a standing base, but Lex takes him back down and gets another chinlock in. Tatanka back up and hits some elbows and a clothesline, but Lex makes his pecs dance and then drops an elbow to get another 2 count. A slam attempt from Lex, but Tatanka reverses into a small package. We get a sunset flip, gets a 2 for Tatanka, and Lex then with a hard kick to Tatanka's ribs, as Jim tells us that there are only 4 minutes left in the match. Lex kicks away in the corner and takes the time to shout at the crowd, takes Tatanka into the turnbuckle, but Tatanka does his sort of Native Americaning up and hits a chop off the ropes. Hits another chop and again another, which gets a 2 count, as Jim Ross tells us that there are 3 minutes left. Lex into the ropes and a power slam gets to Tatanka a 2 count. A slam and Tatanka goes to the top rope and hits a chop off the top, but again only gets a 2. He goes up again and misses a crossbody with 2 minutes left. Lex kicks away and hits a clothesline, gets a 2. Jim Ross now says there are 90 seconds remaining. We get a slam from Lex, which gets a 2, but he doesn't seem to be rushing. Gets a back body drop and a suplex. Randy wonders if they know how long is left, but Bobby says they don't. And to be honest, I don't know that they do, because nobody in the arena probably knows how long's left, because whilst they've been telling us on commentary that there are 4 minutes left, 3 minutes, 90 seconds, at no point have I heard an announcement in the stadium to say that there's any amount of time left. So if they don't know in the stadium, I guess what chance do Tatanka and Lex have of knowing? We get a backbreaker from Lex, who looks, really tired now and takes far too long to get the cover. The bell rings. Lex is mad, as Fink tells us that the time has elapsed and that the match is a draw. And he says both men have been eliminated and that therefore Bam Bam Bigelow advances. Lex gets the mic and says that he wants 5 more minutes, and the crowd seem to enjoy that idea. They want 5 more minutes. Lex takes his pad off his arm and then knocks out Tatanka. Jim Ross points out that that means that Bam Bam is now actually in the final. So from one match, Bam Bam goes straight to the final. That was, let me think of a polite way of saying this, not the most interesting or the most exciting match I've ever seen. Lex seemed to get tired pretty quickly. Tatanka always gets a decent reaction, but he doesn't seem to have that much in the way of moves in the ring. Lex is, like I said, he's new, but again, we haven't really seen the best of him there, I don't think. I don't know why they're wanting to keep Tatanka undefeated. Like, what's the point of that? Where are we going with this whole Tatanka being undefeated story? Lex is undefeated. Would it have really hurt to have had Lex score the big win here and beat Tatanka, end his undefeated streak, set him up as a bit higher? Okay, you maybe don't want Bam Bam and Lex facing off because you've got heel, so have Jim Duggan win. Again, you've got a story there of Jim Duggan, who maybe, okay, has hurt his ribs, but he somehow comes through it. He gets past Bam Bam. Jim Duggan in the next round. Lex Luger beats Tatanka, who has, got this undefeated streak, this, big crowd reaction, but Lex beats him. You've now got Jim Duggan, the All-American hero, versus Lex Luger. What happens there? Do we have Lex again looking strong? Big heel heat going over this All-American hero. You're selling the story of Jim trying, but he's got these bad ribs. Lex beats him, gets to the final. What happens there? I just think there's better ways of doing it, and would have maybe helped Lex a bit more there with his character and his heel heat. But nope, we went this way, so there we go. We've got a draw, and Bam Bam straight into the final. Mean Gene then is backstage with Mr. Perfect and Bret Hart, and he tells us that Bam Bam's gone straight to the final and he will meet either of these two men. Gene says that Bret said earlier that he wanted to face Mr. Perfect. Gene says that Bret makes out that he thinks Perfect would be an easier opponent. No, Gene, he didn't. He said he wanted to face him for the technical ability and the stamina and the quickness rather than the power. Not that he thought he was going to be easier, but whatever. Perfect and Bret then go back and forth, and Gene asks if their dads ever met each other, and Bret says that they did, and that his dad beat Mr. Perfect's dad. Mr. Perfect says that his dad never beat his dad. They then talk about SummerSlam and how Bret won there. Bret's music starts to play, and Perfect offers his hand before taking it away and running it through his hair. He says that he owes Bret for SummerSlam, and tonight he will win. Not the best promo, to be honest. Come on, we're arguing about whether my dad beat your dad. Is that really what we're wanting to hype this match on? Whose dad beat whose? No, it shouldn't have been, but there we go. So, our first match in the next round, and in fact our only match in this round now, Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect. Bret comes out first, straight out of the interview. Jim Ross mentions that we now have a 30 minutes time limit for these matches. Mr. Perfect comes out and we start with another tie-up. Jim points out the strapping on Bret's hand, with the result of Razor stamping on his hand in the first match. We get a headlock from Bret, and on commentary they mention the SummerSlam match again, and how if these two get counted out or draw, then Bam Bam will win the King of the Ring, which, is actually a really good point. Bam Bam might win the King of the Ring by only having one match. We get a headlock from Bret, and a hard chop from Mr. Perfect sends Bret into the corner. We get a series of slams and reversals, which ends with Bret getting a headlock on Mr. Perfect. A crucifix from Bret, which gets a 2, and straight back into a headlock. We get a crossbody from Bret, and he has Mr. Perfect kicking out as he sends Bret to the outside. Bret, though, comes back in with a sunset flip and gets a 2 count, hits another quick takedown into a headlock. At this point, Randy says that Mr. Perfect still has a salty past, just like he does, and he will do whatever he needs to do to win. I'm not quite sure what a salty past is, but yep, Randy says that Mr. Perfect's got a salty past, as does Randy. Bret is sent to the outside, and Perfect holds the rope open for him to get back in, but as he does so, he kicks Bret. Perfect takes Bret face first into the turnbuckle and hits a chop. We get a big knee lift, and Mr. Perfect gets a 2 count. Bret again gets sent to the outside. Mr. Perfect with a chop, and as Bret tries to get back into the ring, Perfect fires Bret off the apron and into the ringside barrier. Bret looks to have actually hurt his knee there as it was a fair distance. Perfect stops the count a couple of times for some reason, but I'm not sure why. Why wouldn't you just want to win? Bret gets back in, and Perfect gets a 2 count. Mr. Perfect then hits a drop kick off the top rope, but only gets a 2. Bret sent chest first into the turnbuckle and gets a 2 count for Mr. Perfect. Bret then gets knocked down, and off the top rope comes Mr. Perfect, hits a top rope suplex, rolls over into a 2. Bret kicks Perfect's leg out and twice takes him down before locking in the figure 4. On commentary they thought he was going for the sharpshooter, but no, just went for a figure 4, but Mr. Perfect won't quit. He fights as best he can to get to the ropes, and then when he finally does, they're both now selling at their knee injuries. We get a single leg takedown, and Bret with a leg grapevine locked in. Perfect locks in a sleeper though, and holds Bret finally gets to the ropes, but Mr. Perfect won't break it until the 4 count, close to getting disqualified. A hard chop, and he locks in a sleeper again, and now uses the ropes for some added leverage. Jim Ross tells us that we have passed the halfway mark of this match, which means that this match is now the same length as the Lex Luger Tatanka match, and this match is so much better. Such a better pace to it, quickness. Yeah, I could watch another 15 minutes of this match. Bret takes Perfect face first into the corner to break the hold and now hits a big forearm, sending Mr. Perfect across the ring by his hair. But Perfect gets back into the turnbuckle. Bret hits an inverted atomic drop and gets a 2 count. We get a backbreaker from Bret and then the elbow from the second rope, which gets a 2 count. We get a sharpshooter attempt, but Perfect has Bret's bad fingers and he stomps on them. We get a perfect plex attempt, but Bret blocks it and ends up suplexing them both over the top rope, which looked really cool. Mr. Perfect, though, is back up first, gets back into the ring. Bret beats the count. Try saying that 10 times quickly. I can't say it once. And he gets a roll-up from Mr. Perfect, gets a 2, but Bret reverses it and gets a 3. Mr. Perfect is not happy with that and shouts at the ref from the outside. Perfect comes back in, looks like he's going to attack Bret, gets in his face before offering his hand. They shake hands before Perfect leaves the ring. I thought that was a really good match. Obviously, both faces, good guys at this point, but I thought Perfect really sort of played well into the heel role there to give Bret somebody to work off of. And yeah, really good match. That was match of the night so far for me, that one. We then see a shot of the tournament showing Bam Bam and Bret will meet in the final. We then go to a pre-tape of Gene and Hulk Hogan. We see Hulk's face bobbing around, but it's actually the back of Jimmy Hart's jacket. Hulk says that he represents all of America and says that there is no water around for a sneak attack. Nicely thinly veiled reference there, Hulk, with no water around for a sneak attack. And that with all the training, vitamins and prayers, he will remain a 5-time champion after testing Yokozuna. Jimmy Hart says that all people want to know is what is Hulk Hogan like, and Jimmy says he was born in the USA, and Hulk shouts some more about the USA and says by crook or by hook he will put the big man down. Fairly standard Hulk Hogan promo, nothing spectacular there. To be honest, I didn't even think it was one of his best. I've heard, more intense Hulk Hogan promos. It was, fine. Fink then introduces the next match as being for the WWF Championship. Yokozuna is out first with Mr. Fuji, and Yoko, I thought was interesting, was announced at weighing 550 pounds. So yeah, they're definitely playing up that he's bulked up here. Interesting that it's the championship match now. We're knowing a bit about what Hulk Hogan's like and his sort of ego. It's interesting that they're having the championship match now. But here we go. Our 6th match of the evening: Yokozuna, the challenger, versus Hulk Hogan, the champion. Bobby again says that Yoko has bulked up, and he hears that Hulk has in fact trimmed down, so he has more speed and endurance. We'll see how that works out. Jim Ross mentions that Hulk won the title in under 30 seconds and that this is in fact his first match since. So it is. This is the first time we've seen the WWF champion other than a quick pre-tape promo since WrestleMania. Hulk's music hits and he gets a decent reaction. Not spectacular, but decent. Hulk rips off his t-shirt, poses in the ring before Yoko takes off his robe and throws salt. And we're ready to go. Hulk Hogan versus Yokozuna. Match 2. We get a shot of Hulk through the massive legs of Yoko as he squats down. Pretty cool camera angle. Yoko does look bigger than he did at WrestleMania, I must say. Yeah, if that's a true 550, I'm not surprised. After circling each other for a while, we get a lock-up to start, but nothing comes of it. So they circle some more before we get another tie-up, and this time Yoko powers Hulk down. Hulk doesn't look best pleased. So we get another tie-up, and this time Yoko hits some chops and a back rake followed by a headbutt. A club to the back of Hulk and he goes down, and then a slam from Yoko, and Yoko's taking his time and just, overpowering Hulk. Yoko is in full control with the slow pace, but he then misses a charge into the corner and Hulk fights back with some right hands. Hulk goes up for 10 punches in the corner and then just starts biting Yoko. He tries to whip Yoko into the corner, follows in with an elbow. Hulk then goes for a slam, but he couldn't get Yoko up and gets hit with a club to the back. Hulk ducks a clothesline and comes back with rights and tries to slam him again, but again he can't get him up. Hulk ducks a couple of clothesline attempts and hits a couple of his own, goes for a third, but Yoko hits one of his own and that takes Hulk down. Yoko then misses a splash as Hulk rolls out of the way. Jimmy gets the crowd going with a good Hulk chant, and Hulk gets back up but runs right into Yoko and gets knocked down again. Yoko locks in a bear hug, but again, it doesn't look great. More just, and again, like a cuddle. I think it's when you do it to tall guys. I don't know, it just doesn't look right. Hulk's arm drops twice, but he keeps it up on the third time and fights out with some right hands. But Yoko hits an elbow as Hulk comes off the ropes. We get a big belly-to-belly suplex from Yoko, which looks really good. Hulk looks done here, but he gets a kick out and then Hulk's up. And now the blows from Yoko don't have the effect that they were having only a matter of seconds ago. We get a right from Hulk and a big boot, but Yoko doesn't go down. Rights from Hulk and another big boot, and he doesn't go down again. So he does it for a third time, and now he's taken Yoko off his feet. We get a leg drop from Hulk, but Yoko kicks out. I mean, yeah, to be honest, I was pretty shocked. Nobody kicks out of that leg drop. Yeah, even at this stage, I thought Hulk's winning here somehow. You know, he's hit the leg drop, that's it. Typical Hulk Hogan match. But no, Yoko's kicked out. Fuji gets up on the apron, but he gets knocked off, and a photographer gets up on the other side of the ring. Hulk goes over to him as his camera explodes in Hulk's face. Yoko hits the leg drop to get the win and to win the WWF Championship. Yoko then drags Hulk into the corner and hits a bonsai drop before Jimmy can drag Hulk out. Jim Ross tells us that kids are crying, but the ones we see don't seem to be. They seem to really not care. Hulk's then helped out of the arena holding his eyes, and Yoko is the new WWF champion. So yeah, I should have maybe mentioned that we were really sort of selling there, that there was a lot of photographers came out. It was this big event in Japan. They were all there to take photos of Yokozuna, and at one point, yeah, one of them there jumped up on the ring. Hulk went over to remonstrate with them. The camera exploded in Hulk's face as he tried to take a picture, I guess. That was what they were going for anyway. And that was it, yeah. Hulk Hogan's no longer WWF champion. He had one title defense, and that was it. Couldn't get the job done. So I guess, yeah, what does that tell us? It tells us that Hulk was lucky at WrestleMania. If Yoko hadn't had that match with Bret, then he would still be champion. I don't really know what the point of all that was, to be honest. Obviously, we didn't see much of the build-up of Yokozuna. We saw him at Royal Rumble, won the Rumble, and then at WrestleMania, he went and beat Bret, this new monster heel, who then 30 seconds after winning the title loses to Hulk, only to then get the title back. I guess, was there thinking that he would beat Hulk as well as Bret, and that would really help Yoko in that he's now beaten both Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan, but then Hulk Hogan beat him 30 seconds after he won it, so does that really make Yoko look that good? I don't know. But anyway, that's where we're at with the WWF Championship back on Yokozuna. We cut backstage and we see Terry Taylor and Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect says that he doesn't feel great after getting beat, so he says his back's hurt and his fingers hurt, but he still just doesn't want to talk and walks off. We then see Mean Gene, who says that Detroit has always embraced the WWF with WrestleMania 3 and SummerSlam 91, and now it's confirmed there's a new WWF champion. Don't know what that's got to do with Detroit. He's with Shawn, who has a match with Crush. He asks Shawn if he thinks lightning can strike twice. Shawn says lightning struck once when it hit Hulk Hogan in the face, and that he is a dinosaur that Yoko gobbled up and is nowhere near as good as Shawn Michaels is. Mean Gene wants to know his insurance policy's name. Shawn gives in and says that his name is Diesel. So we have got a name. We have had our first real introduction to Diesel. Gene then throws it back to ringside where the Steiners music plays, and out come the Steiners and the Guns. For our 7th match of the evening, the Steiner Brothers and Billy and Bart Gunn versus Money Inc. and the Headshrinkers. The match starts with the Guns firing off their guns as they are coming out with tag team champions and Headshrinkers. Ted starts out the match against Scott. Scott takes Ted down, and Jim Ross tells us about Ted's football background and mentions his dad. Jim Ross mentioned a lot about them playing football tonight. Scott gets taken down by Ted, but hits a dropkick and a clothesline takes Ted over the top rope. Rick throws him back in, Another takes him straight back out. Rick again throws him straight back in. Ted tags in Fatu, and in comes Bart, who hits a dropkick after a series of blocks. Jim now tells us about Billy going to school on a rodeo scholarship. Jim Ross says that IRS has held the tag titles with 3 different partners on 4 different occasions, which I'm not sure if that's right or not, Jim, but it doesn't seem right. Ted's back in with Bart, but in comes Fatu and a double back body drop to Bart. The crowd seem really quiet for this one, either because Hulk's just lost or because they really don't care about this match. IRS goes to the top rope and hits a right hand. Afa is taken with money and the briefcase of IRS. He keeps screaming to the camera about the money in the briefcase. Sunset flip from IRS gets 2, and a double clothesline takes them both down. We get a tag from Bart to Billy and IRS to Ted, with Billy getting the advantage before Ted drops him over the top rope and locks in the $1 Million Dream. Jim Ross says that Billy is fading into obscurity. I thought that was a little bit harsh. Ted lets go of the hold, and nobody seems to know why. Even on commentary, they mention that they've never seen him just voluntarily let go of the $1 Million Dream. We get a roll-up from Billy, and he gets the win. All 8 men then get into the ring, and we have a mass brawl until the Steiners and Guns clear the ring. It was just, a stupid ending. Scott shouts out that that's what you get for being cocky. So I guess that's maybe what they were going for, that $1 Million Man was getting a bit arrogant and a bit cocky, and he let go of Billy, but, didn't really make much sense. Like I said, the crowd didn't really seem to care either. But then, it's a shame, because the Headshrinkers and the Steiners seem to have a decent little feud going. I think the tag titles need taking off Money Inc. as soon as possible, because they've done nothing with the tag titles. The Steiners are clearly better. Put it on, the Headshrinkers if you still want a heel team, and then you've got the Headshrinkers Steiners for the belts. The Guns are brand new. Nobody really knows much about them yet, but it was fine. We go backstage to Yokozuna and Mr. Fuji with Gene and Jack Tunney. Jack saw it all happen, and he wants to do is congratulate Yoko and Fuji. Okay. Fuji says he told us it would happen, and Gene asks how they will celebrate. Fuji says they will celebrate in America, and Yoko shouts bonsai before we go back to the ring. Interesting that Jack Tunney says that he saw everything that happened, and he's okay with that. He's okay with Hulk getting this camera exploding in his face, and just, Yoko's the champion now. Nothing Jack Tunney can do about it. What was the point of Jack Tunney exactly there? Anyway, it's time now for Crush versus Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental Championship. Crush is out first, and Jim Ross informs us that Hulk Hogan has not suffered any long-term eye damage, and that we haven't heard the last of Hulk Hogan. Shawn comes out with Diesel behind him, and as they talk as if they think Crush could slam Yokozuna, but Bobby says he doesn't think he could. We start with a tie-up, and Crush gets a headlock on Shawn, and a hard shoulder block from Crush sends Shawn to the outside. Another tie-up, and another headlock. Shawn uses his speed to duck and jump over Crush before getting an armbar, but Crush uses his speed to jump over Shawn and hits a drop kick to take Shawn to the outside. Pretty impressive from Crush, I thought. Crush powers Shawn up into a press slam and then hits a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker, but Diesel pulls Shawn to the outside. While Crush is distracted by Diesel, Shawn attacks from behind, and with the ref distracted, Diesel sends Crush into the ring post, and then Shawn rams Crush's head into the ring post over and over. It was, nasty looking. Shawn breaks the count and rolls Crush back into the ring, but he's out, and Shawn goes for a cover, but Crush does manage to kick out. Shawn to the top rope hits an axe handle. Shawn then gets a 2, but again is now firmly in control after that attack on the outside. Shawn with a front face lock, and Crush eventually powers up, and Randy Savage again goes on about how Crush can slam Yokozuna. Crush then throws Shawn to the outside, but Shawn's back up and goes to the top rope, but Crush moves out of the way and hits a big back body drop. Backbreaker from Crush gets a 2, and a big boot followed by a leg drop from Crush gets another 2. A clothesline from Shawn takes to the outside, and Crush goes to the top rope, but we see Doink coming down to the ring, smoking a cigar, and right behind him there's another Doink. Shawn, after Crush gets distracted by this, hits a super kick to the back of Crush and gets the 3 count, as Crush was distracted looking at the 2 Doinks, who then just run away, and Crush is straight back up after this and chases after them as Shawn celebrates in the ring with Diesel. Not a great match. Certainly not one of Shawn's best. Crush showed moments of being decent, but yeah, I guess we're still going with the Crush Doink angle as well, which hasn't really been mentioned since, I don't know, probably a month ago on Raw. We then go to the back, and Bam Bam is with Mean Gene. Gene points out that Bret has had 2 hard matches, but Bam Bam got here with a bye, and says that he's fresh and he has some business to take care of, and he's going to the ring now. Bam Bam's music then plays, and Fink tells us that this is the final match for the King of the Ring tournament, and there is now a 60-minute time limit. But then Jim Ross starts taking over, so I can't really tell what either of them were saying because they just talk over each other. So it is our 9th match of the evening, and it's the main event of Bam Bam Bigelow versus Bret Hart for the King of the Ring Championship. Is it a championship? It's not, is it? It's a King of the Ring final of the tournament for the title of being King of the Ring? It's for the King of the Ring. Bret comes out to a decent reaction, but nothing as strong as it was earlier. They mention that Bret has a bad leg now as well. Jim Ross hopes that we have enough time left to show the match with just over 20 minutes of satellite time left, but the match has a 60-minute time limit. So either we're going to get through it pretty quick, or we ain't going to know what happens. Bam Bam, though, gets the early advantage. Bret fights back until Bam Bam, with a hard shoulder block, picks Bret up and just tosses him out of the ring. Bret gets back in, and Bam Bam hits falling headbutts and a hard whip into the corner. Headbutt to the back of Bret, and Bret gets a foot on the ropes to break the count. Randy says that even if Bam Bam wins, he has got RESPECT for Bret. A back suplex from Bam Bam gets a 2 count as Bret gets his right shoulder up. Bret fights back, but soon gets taken down again. We get a bear hug from Bam Bam, and this one actually looks right. A bigger guy doing it to a smaller guy. This is what a bear hug should look like. Bam Bam then has Bret up and really looks to be squeezing him hard. Bret gets out of the bear hug, but gets taken straight back down with a back suplex, but gets a shoulder up to stop the count at 2. Bret is taking a big beating and a lot of punishment here from Bam Bam. Bret and Bam goes to the outside, and Bret reverses a whip into the barrier, and as it moves, it looks like Bam Bam and the steel barrier hits straight onto the leg of a small child in the front row. You kind of see after this that, yeah, some people are paying quite close attention to them in the front row, and they look a bit upset. Which, yeah, I can understand that. Bret goes off the apron, but Bam Bam catches him and rams him back first into the post. Bam Bam with a suplex, and in the background you can still see a lot of people gathered around where they hit the barrier. At this point, Luna Vachon comes down and hits Bret with a steel chair to the back while the ref is distracted. Back in the ring, Bam Bam hits a slam, goes to the top rope, hits a flying headbutt, and with that, he gets a 3 count and the win. The winner of the very first King of the Ring is Bam Bam Bigelow. But wait, another referee comes down and tells the other ref that Luna hit Bret, and he makes a very good chair action. They tell the Fink, and the referee reverses the decision. Or at least the Fink tells us that the referees have reversed the decision, and that Bret Hart is the new King of the Ring. But no. He's got it all wrong. The referees go mad and stop Fink. Fink says that he stands corrected. He says the match will continue. So, I don't quite know what that does for Bret. Okay, he hasn't lost the match, but he's still just been whacked in the back with a chair from Luna, had a headbutt and been pinned, so he ain't in great shape. Bam Bam goes straight back to work on Bret's back with headbutts and clubs. Bret is still obviously in a bad way. He gets sent off the ropes and into another bear hug. Bam Bam lifts Bret up into a backbreaker, held him up on his shoulder. Bobby says he's never seen anyone take a beating like this and not give up. Bret keeps his arm up though on the third drop and gets Bam Bam up in a back suplex to buy himself a little bit of time. Bam Bam then misses a splash and Bret has time to recover a little bit, but not for long, as Bam Bam takes over again and sends Bret into the corner. Another backbreaker over the shoulder, but this time Bret counters into a sleeper. Bret dropkicks Bam Bam into the ropes and dumps him to the outside before jumping over the rope and cross-bodying Bam. Bret goes to the second rope and hits a clothesline for a close 2 count. A side rush and a leg sweep and a bulldog off the second rope. Bret goes for the sharpshooter, but Bam Bam overpowers him. Bret runs into another bear hug, but this time Bret bites Bam Bam, and as he goes for a suplex, Bam reverses and gets a 2. Bret gets his feet up as Bam charges into the corner and gets up on Bam Bam's shoulders flips over into a victory roll and gets a 3 count for the win. Randy Savage leaps into the ring to congratulate him. He doesn't even say anything. It's just for a couple of seconds, Randy's there in the ring celebrating with Bret. At this point, Bret then is escorted straight out of the ring, up the ramp to the throne. I guess we're running out of time now. Gets a robe from Gene and a scepter. Bret gets the crown from Gene, and he is crowned our very first King of the Ring. As Jim Ross and Randy Savage say how good Bret Hart is. Mean Gene proclaims ye Bret Hart the King of the Ring. Before anything else can happen, though, Jerry Lawler appears and says that he is here to confront the pretender to his throne. He says there is only one king, and that is him, Jerry the King Lawler. Out of the goodness of his heart, he says that he will allow Bret to be a prince, but only if he gets down and kisses his feet. Bret says Lawler must have a lot of nerve to come out here when he didn't even dare enter the tournament. Bret starts a Burger King chant, as Jerry then hits Bret with his own scepter. Jerry gets a few more shots in before stamping on Bret's crown and hits some right hands, dumps the chair on top of Bret, which looked nasty. He then starts choking Bret with his scepter and generally just, really aggressively beating Bret Hart up. Jerry gets the mic again and says that he gave him a chance before, but now you're going to let him kiss the feet of the only king in the WWF, and then just kicks Bret in the face and kicks him off the steps down to the concrete below the stage. He stamps on the crown again, and we go off the air. And there we have it, our very first ever televised pay-per-view version of King of the Ring in 1993. What did we all think to that? I thought it was okay. I thought some of the matches were decent. The Bret Hart Mr. Perfect match was great. To be honest, the Bam Bam Bret Hart match there at the end was really good. Better than I thought that was going to be. Yeah, not a bad King of the Ring. I'll be interested to see what happens now we've got Yokozuna as champion, somebody who might appear on TV a little bit more than Hulk Hogan. Although saying that, Yokozuna hasn't been on much recently. I thought Shawn looked okay, nothing special. It'd be interesting to see where the Bret Hart Jerry Lawler feud goes, because they were talking about how the King of the Ring was going to be the number one contender. So are we going to see Bret Hart Jerry Lawler, or are we going to see Bret Hart Yokozuna? It'd be interesting to see where we go. So be sure to tune in to more of our wrestling review podcasts as we look back at some more Monday Night Raws coming out of King of the Ring, leading up to the next pay-per-view at SummerSlam. So we've got a few weeks of more Raws before we get to the next pay-per-view, so it'll be interesting to see where we get to. Once again, thank you very much for listening to the Wrestling Review podcast as we look back at King of the Ring 1993. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and get any new episodes as and when they are available. Please do comment, like, share this podcast. It will really do wonders for us getting some more listeners. So again, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time on the Wrestling Review podcast.